And a girl in the class said to me, now, when you say marriage, are you talking about two girls, two guys, a guy and a girl, which is, of course, now where we're at post-Obergefell? There's a lot of confusion in our culture as to what we mean. And so here I am in a classroom and a student asks this question. So I responded and I said, I'm glad that you asked the question because it allows me to clarify something very important. Welcome to the podcast of the National Marriage Campaign. I'm your host, Scott Phelps. Today I want to talk about some of the impediments to teaching marriage. I find that many educators are a little bit hesitant to wade into sort of the deep waters of marriage for a number of reasons, but I think that perhaps at the forefront of the challenge is the issue of same-sex unions. So since Obergefell has legalized what they refer to as same-sex marriage, I think it's caused a lot of confusion, not only among our young people, but even among our adults and educators about, well, now what do I say? Because I always understood marriage to mean one man and one woman, but now the Supreme Court has said that that same term can apply to same-sex unions. And so now I'm not really sure how to approach this. I'm not sure what I'm going to say about marriage now. It's become a bit of a sticky wicket. So I want to share with you my perspective on this and the way that I teach this program, because I think it's important to have confidence. You can't teach anything well if you don't have confidence in the subject matter. If you don't feel like you have mastery over the subject, it's really hard to speak to the issue well. And so I want to encourage you and equip you to address this issue well and to be able to wade into the waters of marriage as it relates to same-sex unions. So as it occurs, I was speaking at a high school, a large suburban high school, and a girl in the class said to me, now, when you say marriage, are you talking about two girls, two guys, a guy and a girl, which is, of course, now where we're at post-Obergefell? There's a lot of confusion in our culture as to what we mean. And so here I am in a classroom and a student asks this question. So I responded and I said, I'm glad that you asked the question because it allows me to clarify something very important. When I'm speaking about marriage in this class and the objective benefits of marriage for individuals and society, I'm speaking about one man and one woman. Yes, same-sex unions have been legalized by Obergefell. However, I'm speaking about one man, one woman marriages because that's what I have research to cite about which I can cite. So, for example, in order for me to speak definitively about something like marriage, I'm not just making stuff up. I'm speaking about what we know based on research. What do we need for research? We need three things. We need a large this is what the researchers tell me, and it makes absolute sense. We need three things. We need a large cohort of people. That means a lot of people for the sample. And then we need a large cohort, and then we need a long period of time. And then we need an analysis or synthesis or meta-analysis of those studies, right? So we need a large group of people over a long period of time, and then we need to feed those studies into one another to come out with a distilled, definitive statement about marriage that we can speak about, which we can speak confidently. I have that for one man, one woman relationships, or what has traditionally been defined marriage over time up until, a few minutes ago. And so we've got so much research, and I've already mentioned in another episode the Why Marriage Matters book by Glenn Stanton, which is fantastic, as well as Brad Wilcox, Get Married. There's another book by Maggie Gallagher and Linda Waite called The Case for Marriage. There are a number of very helpful books, which are really a compilation of research on the subject of marriage so that you can equip yourself as to the benefits of marriage. Now, all the research that I'm citing, as I've said, is research that has been conducted with one man, one woman relationships. Now, as it relates to same-sex unions, yes, they're now legal, but they're also structurally brand new in terms of their legality. And so the reality is we don't have the three things necessary. We don't have a large cohort, we don't have a long period of time, and we don't have a meta-analysis. Therefore, I really can't, not only shouldn't I, but I really can't speak to anything regarding same-sex unions because I don't know. In other words, if I make claims about same-sex marriage, like for example, I'm doing a debate at Loyola University. And one of the students raises his hand and he says, well, aren't you concerned about domestic violence? What about domestic violence in a marriage relationship? And I said, yes, of course, that happens, unfortunately, sometimes, and it's bad. We don't want that. But I do know this. If you're concerned about domestic violence, you should know that marriage is the safest place that you could be. He says, what do you mean? What do you mean? Where'd you get that from? And I said, well, it's the research. So I went over and I went over to my book bag. I was at the auditorium at Loyola University. I went over, I picked up my book bag, and I went to Glenn Stanton's Why Marriage Matters, and I flipped open to a particular page in the book, and I quoted from the Journal of Family Violence, which is in the book. And I didn't know there was a Journal of Family Violence. But when I went to the book and I cited the research from the Journal of Family Violence showing that the highest rates of domestic violence were among cohabitors, unmarried cohabitors, and that the lowest rates of domestic violence were among married couples. So in other words, anything I'm going to say on the subject of marriage, I can cite data, I can cite research to support my claims. I'm not just making stuff up. Now, as it relates to same-sex unions, I don't have that body of research. There is some research out there, but it's new, it's young, it's not vetted essentially. There aren't enough studies with enough people over enough time that have then been synthesized so that we can make definitive claims. Now, when that research is out, I'll be happy to say whatever it says, but right now we just don't have it. And so if you're an educator and you're wondering, how do I navigate this? My counsel to you is not to speak about that which we don't know for sure, because if you can't cite something, you really shouldn't be saying it, but rather to focus on what we can say. And I think that just because we don't know what to say over here, it should not keep us from saying what we do know over here. Does that make sense? So I'm wanting to equip you and encourage you to speak forthrightly and confidently to your young people about the beauty and the value of marriage for individuals and society. And we are speaking about one man, one woman. That still is the vast majority of marriages, and it's what we have research on that we can speak about. But we should not, for sake of questions and uncertainty over here, say nothing about, and I think that's what happens. I think because now we're a little bit, I don't know what to say, that we end up saying nothing. And I think that is a great harm to our young people. We should be informed, and we should speak up, and we should teach these things clearly to our youth. Thank you.